Good morning and welcome. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. As always, thank you so much for listening, for tuning in. We're back to a regular weekly format. I think I'm going to stick with Fridays for the time being. That seems to be the day that works the best for me and everyone else. We're living in mad times. It's a mad world. We're going to talk about the NICE attack. We're going to talk a little bit about a local story coming out of our local state legislature. But we're going to have some fun, too, as always. You know, I have to talk some gaming. We'll talk some gaming in the final 30 minutes of the show. And we're going to talk about fantasy football. My guest today is one of my good friends, a great fantasy football guy. I'm going to let him pronounce his last name for you guys, but you can find him out there on Twitter. We'll be tweeting out a link to his Twitter account. We're going to talk about the Scotty Fish Bowl, the SFB 480 fantasy draft that I'm involved with. He's involved with. A lot of fantasy football folks are involved with. It's a lot of fun, and I'm having a lot of fun with it this year. So we'll talk about that. But we're going to start with some things that are I suppose rather deep. The ESPYs were this week, and we're seeing a lot. You know, my, how times are changing, right? Except that athletes have, for a long time, use their high profile, the high profile nature of what they do and their platform for to make political statements. We've talked a little bit about that on this show. Muhammad Ali, just one example of that. The ESPYs were this week, and some very powerful moments coming out of that with many athletes speaking up and speaking out about some of the things that are going on in this world. We live in a violent world. I talked a little bit about that when we talked about gun control over the course of the past two shows. That's been a topic on this show quite a bit. If you think that gun control is a thing, if you think that gun control is going to help, I'm not going to really argue with you too much about that. I mean, I'm not opposed to sensible gun control, but again, this isn't really about guns. It's about violence. It's about our world thinking that violence is the answer, and we see that in so many different areas. You know, we talk a lot about on this show about sticking to sports. That was a big topic in our last show. Trying to stick to sports. I can't count the times that I've been told that. And I've talked a little bit about why I made that decision, that personal decision not to do that. You know, because it's important to me to speak out on things that I think are important and relevant. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to listen to it, if that's not your thing, fine. You know, don't do it. Don't listen to it. You don't have to follow me out there on Twitter. You don't have to listen to this show. But, you know, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me to stick to sports. Don't tell these athletes to stick to sports, that they shouldn't use their voice to speak out on things that are important to them. But I also think that, you know, if you don't want to, if you don't have to, that's fine. You know, Michael Jordan is getting a lot of grief out there because he very famously stayed away from it and he was not involved in any of that. And, you know, in some of their early careers, you know, guys like LeBron James, he didn't speak out early on. And, you know, that's okay. People should do what they're comfortable with. Athletes shouldn't feel obligated to do it. But, you know, if they want to do it, they should have that ability. They should have that right. I mean, with everything that's going on in the world today, we've got to make a difference. We've got to stop. We've got to stop gun violence. We've got to stop bomb violence. We've got to stop. This guy in NICE drove a truck into a crowd of people that included, young children, and killed. The death toll last time I saw was roughly 80 plus people, many more injured, and just, a devastating attack on, on you and me. I mean, that could be you or me. We could be at the park doing, doing, things that we like to do with our family, and that could be us. We've got to somehow figure out a way to peacefully coexist, and to understand that violence is not the answer. Killing each other is not the answer to our problems. We've got to do better, about that. And I certainly don't have any answers, but I think it's important for all of us to speak up and to speak out on these things. I read a very interesting, I said I was going to discuss this, so I want to talk about it. I read a very interesting article from Jesse Leach. He is the frontman, the vocalist for a musical group called Kill Switch. And it was very interesting. He said, that he sat back and hadn't been commenting on things going on in the world, and he could not be silent anymore. And he wrote a very interesting statement that I think everybody should read. And you don't have to agree with everything that he says, but we've got to start listening to one another. We have to start listening to one another. We're never going to come to any understanding of one another until we start listening to one another. And I think that's a lot of the problem with us thinking that violence is the answer. We don't have the ability to just listen. You don't have to agree with what someone is saying, but you should have the patience and the empathy and the understanding to listen to them, to hear what they have to say. If you think that you're the smartest person in the world, if you think that you're the smartest person in the room, chances are you're probably not. And if you don't think that someone, who has an opposing view from you has something to tell you, I think that says a lot about you. And it really is interesting. He said, and I can so relate to this. He said that, he knew that he was going to face some backlash from it, some blowback from it. And I'll quote from the statement: knowing full well the insurmountable ridicule and abuse I may receive from this post, I cannot stay silent anymore. And I can so relate to that, and I'm sure these athletes can too. It's really hard to sit back and watch discourse go down without weighing in, without giving your own personal thoughts on that. And I will tweet out the link to this. It's got a lot of really good sentiments to it. I like to see guys like this with a high profile, the athletes at the ESPYs. We can make a difference. If you think one person can't make a difference, you're wrong. One person can make a difference, but how you choose to make a difference. The lone truck driver of the truck in Nice who killed an untold countless number of people. The death toll is still rising. He's making a difference. One person can make a difference. So how you choose to do that in either a positive or a negative fashion really says a lot about you. And there are always going to be people who try to silence you because there are small-minded people in this world, and they're going to silence you because, for whatever reason, because they think an athlete shouldn't speak out, because they think a woman shouldn't speak out, because they think your opinion is not worthy of being voiced. Don't let them. Don't let them silence you. If you've got something that you think is important to say. Sharona's not going to stick just to sports. Now, sports is going to always, be something that, that I'll talk about and be interested in. But you can't separate sports and politics. We've talked about that on this show. You can't separate it. It's always going to be, because sports doesn't operate in a vacuum, and it shouldn't operate in a vacuum. Think about how terrible it would be if sports didn't care anything about basic human rights. That would be just an awful, awful thing, and I don't think anybody would want that. So just a little food for thought. It's 2016, you guys, it's been a difficult year. I'm sort of over you, 2016. We lost Prince. Prince died. Prince died. Five from A Tribe Called Quest. He died. Pat Summitt died. There was a great tribute to Pat Summitt last night. It's really been a difficult year. We're losing a lot of icons in a lot of different areas. Tim Duncan officially finally retired from the National Basketball Association. I'm going to try to get through this without crying. People who listen to this show regularly know that I'm a big Tim Duncan fan. And, you knew this day was going to come at some point, but you try to prepare for it as much as you possibly can, but you can't help but let it affect you. And it's really kind of a sad time for me, even though I knew it was coming, to see that, Tim Duncan hanging up the cleats, but he did it in such Tim Duncan style that it was really neat to see all of the stories coming out from the basketball, not just the basketball community, but primarily the basketball community, talking about their interactions with him and how he gave a helping hand to guys that were not just teammates, but were opponents. He helped guys on opposing teams who were young and learning. That says so much about who he was as a person. And the NBA, it will go on. Life goes on, but it really lost a great ambassador for the sport, and it's kind of sad for me to see that old passing of the guard. Best wishes to him on his retirement. I'm kind of curious to see what he does with his retirement. Will he ride off into that glorious sunset, and will we ever hear from him again? I'm sure that we will. What will he do? I'm rather curious to see what the next chapter is for Tim Duncan. He would make a great coach. I think that he would be a great coach, and I don't know if that's anything that he's interested in, but I think that it would be something that he would be very good at. And will he do media? I really doubt that. I don't think that he will do that. But we'll see. I suppose that we'll see. In about 15 minutes, we're going to have my buddy Mike coming on. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we're going to turn our attention to the Scotty Fish Bowl. I'm going to talk a little bit about my team and about the process, my thought process. We'll talk some more with Mike about this too. My thought process on some of my draft picks, and then we'll have a little fun discussion right before Mike comes on about. I asked you guys. I'm in the Tom Hanks division, so I asked you guys what the best Tom or your favorite Tom Hanks maybe is where we'll talk about that. So we'll take a quick break. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. We're going to talk some sports now, turn our attention to sports. When we come back from our sports discussion in the last 30 minutes of the hour, we're going to talk some gaming. We'll have some more thoughts on politics. Well, let's have some fun right now. The SFB 480 Fantasy Draft, the Scotty Fishbowl Fantasy Draft is going on. I'm so thankful and proud to be a part of this. The fantasy football community, in my opinion, is one of the best communities in all of sports, and it is filled with some excellent people, some excellent writers, some great football minds. There are too many. I could spend an entire 3-hour show just mentioning some of the great men and women that I've interacted with out in that community, and we're always happy and proud to showcase you know, great minds. And Liz Loza has been on this show, Allie Fontana. I need to get Allie back on here, just to name a few of the women in the community who've been on this show. Always happy to have women who play fantasy. Lisa London, I should mention Lisa. Jennifer Eakins, my good friend Jennifer Eakins. Always happy to have women in that community on here. So I'm involved in the Scotty Fishbowl Fantasy Draft, and it's all, I have resolved to be a better fantasy football player this season, and not just in drafting and playing and whatever. I really have culled down and reduced the amount of teams that I'm going to be involved with. I just, over the past couple of years, you want to be on the grind and you want to stay on the grind, but I just overextended myself. I got myself involved in way too many things, and so I took a break. You guys know I was off for a little bit. I took a pretty long break, and I wasn't just sitting around eating cheese puffs, although I seem to do that on a regular basis. I was working really hard and doing stuff, but I wasn't on social media. I wasn't doing my podcast. I wasn't actively involved in the world of sports, which was kind of freeing and really, I think it was a good thing for me because it allowed me to recharge and rejuvenate that aspect of who I am. So I've resolved to be, better about that, and to really kind of focus myself on a lesser number of things that way, so that I can be more responsive and hopefully be a better fantasy football player and fantasy football teammate. So anyway, so I'm involved in the Scotty Fishbowl draft, and it's always I like doing these things. I like doing mock drafts. I need to really get back into doing that. But it's always an interesting interesting project to be involved in these things, because you really see, we all have our own little theories about, how to go about things. And for me, first and foremost, it's about having fun. You should have fun doing it. You should have fun in that process. And so my very first selection, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, in drafting. I have the 11th pick, which in a way is good because you're not. It's good and bad. You get to wait and see what people are doing, and then you sort of have back-to-back selections, but then it's a long wait to your next pick. But still, it's good because you get to see what people are doing. I watch and you see what people are doing, try to extrapolate, a little bit about their theory and how they draft. So my first pick came up, and I was so nervous. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, I took a guy that I was very high on coming out of Clemson, and as it turns out, he's just been an outstanding NFL wide receiver. My first pick was Nuke Hopkins from the Houston Texans. I typically tend to stay away from Texans players. I wasn't able to regularly get Andre Johnson until he became a Colt, and woof, boy, was that really heavily into the Colts offense last night. Woo, that was a terrible decision. You just never know. So anyway, but I took him, and I was really happy with that. And then my next selection was David Johnson. And in a lot of my MFLs and other drafts last year, I invested heavily in David Johnson. I was very happy with that. And so I took him it was at 2.02. And I said, that I thought that was a little bit high, and everybody was very gracious to let me know that he had been going a lot higher in other drafts. And so at that point, I went out and started looking at, what fantasy players were doing in other divisions and stuff, which was interesting because when I came to my next pick, I had a major decision to make, or major for me, because it was in the third round. And if you're playing, you understand what I'm talking about. You can filter your players in a number of different ways, by ADP, by last year's fantasy points, by name, by team, a lot of different ways that you can filter it. And the ADPs on these rookies are pretty interesting. I'm not opposed to drafting rookies, to investing heavily in rookies, but I think that you have to balance out your roster. You can't go rookie heavy. A good mix of I'll buy into 1, 2, maybe 3 rookie players, but I like to have veterans on there. Guys that have proven themselves. So anyway, Derrick Henry is staring. His ADP is really high in this, and I went out and looked, and nobody. There are a lot of divisions that are way far ahead of us in drafting. Some of them are done. We're like in the 12th round, I think, right now. So anyway, so I'm like, okay, I can probably get this guy like much, much, much later, but I'm gonna hate myself if I wait. And somebody else. It only takes one. Somebody else comes in and does this, and I almost took Lamar Miller. He's a guy that a lot of fantasy minds that I really respect, think is going to do very well with the Texans. So I was like, I don't know. So I just went ahead and did it. Why not? YOLO. You only live once. YOLO. So that was my YOLO pick. But at that selection, I was like, really want to draft Tyrod Taylor. I want him on my team. Another guy that I invested heavily, and a very underrated fantasy quarterback. His ADP to me is just ridiculously low. But anyway, so I was like, but I waited on him, and I was like on pins and needles. I was like, oh my God, somebody's going to take him. And sure enough, nobody took him. So I was so happy. I got him in the 4th round. And then, let's see who else. So after that, I got my 5th round pick was Tyler Lockett, another guy that I really wanted. He's got special teams ability. He's going to be a great wide receiver in this league, no question at all in my mind. Golden Tate, I think that was my next selection. Then I was able to snag Alex Smith. We had a great discussion about Alex Smith on Going for Two Wednesday night. Check that out. You can get my thoughts on him. Love the guy, and for this format, for the SFB 480 format, he's a really great option. Mike and I are going to have a discussion about Alex Smith versus Tom Brady. We'll see how that goes when he calls in and we talk about the Scotty Fish Bowl. And then, let's see, I took Gary Barnidge, tight end, as my tight end, my first tight end, Gary Barnidge, Jason Witten, and Justin Forsett. And then the last selection that I made, roughly somewhere around midnight last night, Chris Johnson, sort of a handcuff to David Johnson. Although, I think that that's going to be probably a rotational situation. You're going to see those guys share looks, share carries. I'm very interested to see how that goes down. So I think so that's it. That is my team. the current status of my SFB 480 team, 12 players, 12 rounds in. We are, let's see, right now, where are we? So I'm in the Tom Hanks division. And for fun, I asked you guys to weigh in on what your favorite Tom Hanks movie was, or what you thought was. We are now at 13.02, so we're in round 13. I'm at 13:11, so I've got a few more picks ahead of me before I select. So I asked you guys to weigh in on what your favorite or what you thought the best Tom Hanks movies were. So I'll read some of your responses real quick while we're waiting on Mike. Forrest Gump, Jim Nyes, Big Jim Sports, Jim Nyes was the first to respond, so I have to give a shout out to him. Forrest Gump, no question, incredible movie and soundtrack. And then he mentioned The Terminal, which I have not seen. I need to see that. Forrest Gump, probably one of the most recognizable Tom Hanks movies out there. Then Jeff Lloyd weighing in, he said Saving Private Ryan was absolutely incredible, and it really is it's a very good, interesting movie. Ken Preds to the Cap also agreeing with Jeff on Saving Private Ryan. And then Will West, great sports radio guy from Knoxville, threw out Road to Perdition, which is a brilliant movie. It's very hard for me to watch. It's a brilliant movie. I think that I have it on DVD. It is a movie. Tom Hanks has starred in so many movies that I'll sit and watch over and over and over again. Road to Perdition is just not one of them. It's very hard. I watched it all the way through. I've watched it, bits and pieces of it again, but it's hard for me to watch that all the way through. Let's see. What else? I'm having to scroll through. Joe and the Volcano, Keith Myers said, as long as it's not Joe and the Volcano. I love Joe versus the Volcano. I think that's a great movie. It's a fun movie. A movie that I had forgotten about as I laid down to try to get some sleep last night was Turner and Hooch. I'm kind of surprised nobody brought Turner and Hooch up, but that's another Tom Hanks movie. He's been in a lot of great what people like to call chick flicks. Sleepless in Seattle is one of them. You've Got Mail, Julie from Duval pointing out both of those movies, which are really fantastic and great movies that I love to sit and watch. So those are just some. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm scrolling down because my tweet deck went kind of crazy. I was going to read some more of your responses. Oh, here we go. Okay. Sleepless in Seattle. Let's see. See what else we've got here. Oh, The Green Mile. I knew that there was a good one. Phoebe, my girl Phoebe, pointing out The Green Mile. That's such a great movie. If you haven't seen Green Mile, you really need to watch it. It is so good. Phoebe also pointing out about Philadelphia. That's a great movie. Really excellent movie. You should watch that too. We've got Mike coming on now, so I'm going to go ahead and take another quick break. When we come back, my buddy Mike is going to join me. We're going to talk about Tom Brady, SFB 40, some Patriots talk, so stay tuned in. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. All right. Welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. Hey, Mike, I think we've got an echo from you.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I think so.
I can hear my voice.
Yeah.
Let me try calling back on a different phone. 1 second.
Okay.
Be
All
right
right.
back.
Okay. So Mike's gonna call back in, and we're gonna turn to some Patriots talk. Let me tweet you guys out a link to his Twitter account. Sometimes, technology is a wonderful thing, but sometimes it gets a little crazy. You got to massage it a little bit and have some issues on here. So far, so good, though. The return has been fairly technologically sound, so I'm kind of happy about that. We'll get Mike back on here in a minute. Again, I can't point out enough what a great community we have, and I'm so thankful to have such such great friends out in the community like Mike, who'll come on here and he will share their thoughts and share their opinions. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, good. Can you hear me better?
Oh, yes, that's perfect. Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you so much for joining me. I told
Yep.
everybody, because I am terrible with that, I would let you pronounce your last name.
It's funny. It's pronounced Margosian, but the joke is that everyone in my family says it differently.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, see,
So
I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah, there's no wrong way.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've been talking a little bit about the SFB 480 fantasy draft. Shout out to Scott Fish for doing this. Scott is such a wonderful person, and this is such a fun thing to do. I'm so proud to be associated with it.
Yeah, I mean it's a blast. I did it last year as well. It's just so much fun.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
I was listening to you a few minutes ago. You're talking about the community, just so many people
Yeah.
come together in the draft. It's just a great time.
It really is a great time. We have a great community, don't you think? I think we've got the best sports community out there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's even you get when new people kind of hop on that just have like 10 followers, they hop right in and everyone kind of embraces people and talks and no one really gets mad at each other that much.
Not that much. Yeah,
No,
sometimes. But
just some disagreements.
Those debates those debates can be fun too. As long as you're respectful and and don't get too personal about it. All right, so you and I had a very interesting discussion that turned into a full-blown thing in my mentions about Tom Brady. I want to start with that, and we'll talk about SFB 480 in general, and we'll talk some more about the past. I want to get your thoughts on their running back situation and whatnot. But I want to start with Tom Brady. We're not going to talk about Deflategate, just as a pure fantasy quarterback perspective and value, because you and I disagree, and that's fine. That's okay.
Yep.
Give us your. I'm going to commit the mistake that everybody hates, but give us your thoughts on Tom Brady as a fantasy prospect. Where would you take him? What are your thoughts on how the suspension is going to affect him?
Yep, absolutely. So I think there's kind of two different things. One is, I do a lot of the MFL 10s, so the best ball.
Right.
And that is total points for the year. So the 4-game, I'm just going to assume he has the 4-game suspension at this point because it's looking like that. So that hurts that a lot because it's total points and you're missing 4 games of that. So that really hurts his value a lot. So I'm pretty much avoiding him now in those unless he falls into like the 12th, 13th round. He's been going in about the 9th or so, 8th, 9th. So I'm pretty much avoiding him now there. But in regular redraft or like the Scott Fish Bowl where I actually drafted him, I think it's fine because if he can survive those 4 weeks, he'll come back fresh. He'll be, pumped up. Hopefully he's in mid-season form already. And then you just kind of want to get in the playoffs, and you'll have Brady then. He won't be suspended for those games.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you, everybody has their own, kind of their own process, their own little, checklist sort of things. How do you approach, how do you approach fantasy drafts? What is your process on that?
Well, as you probably know, I do pretty much everything in Excel. So, especially for the Scott Fish Bowl, I have a huge Excel file I have going for this where I have 4 different rankings. I'm sorted by projected points, ADP, kind of my rankings, the pre-draft ADP, like all those mocks. So I just gather all this information, kind of lay it all out, and as the draft goes, a majority of my drafts are slow drafts online, like the Fishbowl or MFL 10s. So as the draft goes, I generally check off players, cross them out, in whatever fashion, kind of cross them out. And then when I'm on the clock or close to it, I kind of look across all those different lists, kind of the ADP list as well as the projected point list, and kind of try to find value there to kind of see which, if a guy jumps out there, kind of, it's easy to see. And if I have him as my top for ADP and points, it's an easy grab. So I definitely do a lot of legwork up front, doing probably way too much, different analysis and kind of laying out my draft boards.
I don't know. I mean, I think again, it's all about what works for you, right? I mean, I don't think that maybe you can't. When you said that, I was recalled back to my very first fantasy draft, which was 2005, 2006, somewhere. I think it was 2006, because I think my very last pick was Vince Young. But anyway, and back then, revealing my age, right? Back then, you didn't have these fancy phone apps and all of that. We did ours by Excel spreadsheet, and we turned our rosters in by email, and it was a live draft, and it was a keeper league.
Yep.
So I showed up to the live draft, and I had to interview. I mean, I actually had to interview. I was the first female that they had ever allowed in the league. And I got to tell you, some guys weren't all that thrilled about it, but I had to interview to get into it. My boyfriend at the time, my boyfriend, whatever. My boyfriend at the time played in the league, and he went to the commissioner and he said, look, they had an open team. He said, you should let her play. She just never played fantasy football before. And, you should do this. And so he was like, and he was cool. All he was doing was trying to protect his league. He didn't want, I think that he would have done that with a guy, though maybe not nearly as, as in detailed and whatever. But anyway, so I show up to the first draft, and I've got reams of paper. I mean, I've got a folder, and I've got, top 100 lists and running back lists and wide receiver lists. And, I really put my first, probably 6 or 7 years, I probably put an inordinate amount of research into it. And now, I still do research, but not nearly as much. Do you find that as time goes on, you're more comfortable with the process and you don't do as much, or are you still doing as much research as you did in the beginning?
I definitely do more research now, but I'm definitely a lot more comfortable nowadays just making picks on the fly and kind of having different strategies, just because I've done so many drafts that I can kind of feel out the draft as it goes for the most part. My home league is obviously a lot different than some of the online leagues. Everyone still goes running back heavy, so I'll go wide receiver heavy there. So, but if different values fall, I'm comfortable jumping on that. But it's you really got to play to your audience. That's one of the main things. Or like a home office league is going to be so much different than an MFL 10 or industry leagues and such.
Yeah. Well, my process has changed, and maybe you can speak a little bit to this too. The first thing I do anymore is try to really nail down the scoring. Because one of the more common mistakes that I have made is not to pay enough attention to that. So one of the first things I'll do is look at the bylaws and the scoring, and try to figure out a way to, because it's so important, right? I mean, if you really need to know the scoring system that you're in, what kind of rosters how your roster is supposed to be constructed and all of that. And that that was a common mistake that I would do, is not paying enough attention to that. So I'll do that. And then again, I don't know if you heard me say this, I really try to pay attention, especially if it's, if I'm playing with people that are new to me, which is one of the great things about the Scotty Fishbowl League. If I'm playing with people that are new to me, I try to figure out what their game is. Do you do that?
Yeah, if it's especially more towards the dynasty leagues where you kind of know people and you'll go against them each year, it's definitely key to kind of take some notes, whether you write them down or kind of mental notes of if the player generally goes towards the running backs, goes towards the flashy names or anything different. But like you hit on that, understanding the scoring setting and kind of the roster construction is huge.
It really is.
I mean, like you, I'm sure, most of our leagues are PPR leagues, or at the very least half PPR. But I have a few. One of my actual biggest money dynasty I had joined with my old manager is a non-PPR kind of keeper league.
Yeah.
It's such a big switch just to kind of change that around, because I still try to go wide receiver heavy there, but that doesn't work too well for the most part.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, and that's why I don't know if you heard. I'm trying to, not to last year I really overextended myself. As you know, I did a lot of the MFL 10s, and which are fairly low maintenance, but still it looms in your mind. Like, you've got all these fantasy teams out there, and even if you don't have to set your roster, it's like kind of weighs on you. Let's swing back around to Tom Brady. I want to ask you about Jimmy Garoppolo. What are your thoughts on him? The Scotty Fishbowl being a deep league, is he worth a late round flyer?
I don't think he's worth the pick because, assuming Brady misses those first 4 games, you're getting him for the first 4 games, and then theoretically and hopefully, as a Pats fan, he doesn't play again the rest of the year. So the goal is to make the playoffs and score the most points. That's kind of the opposite of what you're doing.
Right.
Obviously it'll help you for those 4 weeks, but.
Yeah, I took my last pick and my quarterback 3. Again, Scotty Fishbowl League being so deep. My quarterback 3 last year was Brock Osweiler. And, you do never know. And,
yeah, exactly.
You may disagree with this, but I said on Going for 2 Wednesday night, a show that you've been on, and thank you again for donating your time to do both of these shows. But I said Wednesday night, Old Man Time really is undefeated, and he's faced a Tom Brady before in another generation, and ultimately he's going to win. Is there a chance that if Jimmy Garoppolo does play well and the team is doing well, that Bill Belichick will Drew Bledsoe Tom Brady?
0 chance. He'll, as big as Belichick is around here, he's just second only to Brady as probably the most loved person here. He would get lynched if he just for non-injury reasons benched Brady for Garoppolo. That would just be mutiny.
Yeah,
so,
he's not afraid to do what he's not afraid to make moves that that people would that people would disagree with. I tend to agree with you, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the most likely scenario is, I forget when because Brady's restructured his contract like every year, but I think in 2 years. So end of 2017, I think, Garoppolo and Brady's contract are up. So if Garoppolo plays well and Brady starts to decline, that's I think the time that Belichick could move on from Brady. If he doesn't play him out until Brady actually just officially retires. So if there's a chance of that happening.
Yeah, I'm never going to try to predict what Wild Bill will do. What about the running back situation? How do you think that's going to shake out?
I think it's going to be similar to last year, especially when Dion Lewis was healthy, whereas if they're playing a bad run defense, Blunt's just going to get the ball, they're just going to pound it, and
Mhm.
just crush a team that way. But if it's a good run defense, Blunt will probably get 3 carries and he'll just do short passes, screens, and hopefully Dion Lewis stays healthy so they can do a lot of little dump passes to him. And he's a shifty guy, so we'll see. So I hope the run game is pretty strong because I got him and then I got James White, and there's a few other guys.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, ground. You think they're going to do like a ground and pound kind of thing? Is that going to be it?
I think only if because the Pats are probably the best of adjusting to a team's weakness. I remember
they really are.
2 years ago when they played Detroit, and Detroit's run defense was, I think, at the top of the league at that time. They ran the ball, I think, twice the whole game. It was until like the last end of the game. So it was just take away their, Belichick's mantra is take away their best weapon. And if the team's best weapon is stopping the run, they just won't run at them.
I think that is the thing that Bill Belichick does the best. And I completely agree with you. I think that they are the best team possibly ever at that. And really exploiting what their opponent does, good and bad. And I think that that's one of the hallmarks to his brilliance. Yeah. So
it's
what
amazing,
about
it's amazing how many other teams don't do that.
Yeah.
They have they're going against Carolina last year when Josh Norman was shutting everyone down. Don't show it. Yeah. Don't throw it to him. You do other stuff.
Yeah. Or if they're facing a really good special team return guy, don't kick it. I mean, he won't kick it.
Kick it out of bounds.
It's really What about wide receiver? Is what's going on with Aaron Dobson? He's still on the team, right?
He's probably right on the bubble. I mean, because they got obviously Edelman, Amendola. He restructured, so he's dirt cheap. Okay. I think he's like $1 million cap hit or something. Mm-hmm. So he's super cheap. So they got him. They got obviously just signed Chris Hogan. They drafted Malcolm Mitchell, who I'm pretty high on. I think he'll step up next year. I don't think he'll make too much this year. Matthew Slater, who's the special teams like all-star, all-pro. So he'll make the team. So I think it's right on the edge of Dobson, Nate Washington. So one of those guys will probably not make the team.
It would be hard for me to believe that Nate Washington wouldn't make the team because he's such a solid, underrated veteran wide receiver. But they did invest a second rounder, I believe, in Aaron Dobson, and even though he's been a huge disappointment, but they're not afraid to move on.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they're certainly not afraid. Well, tight end is Gronk, obviously. Who's going to be the second guy?
Well, Martellus Bennett.
Okay.
So that's an easy one. I don't think I'm trying to remember who the other tight ends they have on the team because they got rid of Hooman 2 years ago or last year, and then there's been a few other kind of plotters and Chandler. Scott Chandler? Didn't really work out too well. I think he's retired now. So I think it'll be Gronk and Bennett and some third tight end that'll just be kind of a blocking tight end. I looked at.
My brain's not where I had forgotten that Martellus. The Patriots are so good in free agency. You can, not always the best at the draft. You may disagree with that, but they've been kind of hit or miss in the draft. But they are so good in free agency.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially kind of wide receivers, they're notoriously bad at drafting. So I think pretty much any wide receiver they have, they traded for or signed in free agency, all the good ones. So I mean, even Edelman was brought in as a quarterback and changed to wide receiver. So he wasn't even drafted as a wide receiver.
That's interesting. But I know that you've got other things you need to do. Let's talk a little bit about in general fantasy steals and deals. What guys do you like this year? What guys are you avoiding?
I'm definitely going towards on some of the quarterbacks, kind of like the on the cheap side, Cousins, Flacco, and Cutler a little bit because he's dirt cheap. He's on the dirt cheap side. Kind of some late guys that I like kind of what the hell is his name? The guy in Washington, Chris Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Thompson. Okay. Yeah, he's good. I think he'll get a lot of the third down work on kind of some PPR stuff. I think he's pretty solid. Who are some of your kind of late round running backs that you're looking at?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask you. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Running back's kind of interesting this year. I was a little nervous drafting Chris Johnson last night, but I think that's a solid pick. I almost took Bilal Powell, and I see that he got snagged in the 13th round. Jarrett McKinnon, the second running back, in Minnesota. I really like him a lot. I think James Starks, he's another guy that you probably might want to snag out there. Let me see who else is.
Yeah, I think Starks is a good pick, even if Lacey doesn't go down.
Yeah.
I think he'll spell him. He'll be the good third down guy. Kind of mix it in.
Yeah, he always does seem to get to get points. I had him. Was it last year, year before last, on a couple of teams? He was last year, and I mean I agree, he's a solid guy. Those are the names that kind of come to my mind. What do you think about Javorius Allen?
I think he's actually pretty good if you can get him cheap enough. That's the problem. He has to be cheap enough because he'll get some third down work, but he's still a big risk.
I drafted Justin Forsett in SFB 480. I got him. I thought at a really good spot. With D'Angelo Williams, speaking of second running backs, what are your thoughts on D'Angelo Williams? Is he, or are you drafting him, buying into him at all?
I think only if he drops. I think he's been going a lot in the 10th round of MFL 10s, which is a little too expensive for me. Because I think if Bell is healthy most of the year, Williams won't get enough carries to kind of warrant that price. But if he can drop in MFL 10s like the 12th, 13th round, I've grabbed him a few times recently, actually.
Yeah. I took a lot of flack for taking Derrick Henry as high as I did, but like my philosophy, and first of all, I'll repeat myself: have fun. You should have fun. Select the guys that you believe in. Select the guys that you like. I believe in Derrick Henry, and I was gonna kick myself if I was like, I can get him later, and somebody else was like, I'm gonna just go ahead and take him. So anyway, have fun.
In the Scott Fish Bowl, I mean, you're going to have to. Guys have been going all over the place. So reach for your guy, get your guys, and you're going for the home run. Because if Murray goes down or is a complete disappointment, Henry takes over. He could be a beast in the playoffs for you.
Well, I kind of compared it to, and it's not a perfect analogy, but I sort of compared it to Jerome Bettis and Willie Parker. Back when they made that Super Bowl run, and Jerome Bettis was the goal line guy, and such a great fantasy football. I think I had him on my team that year, and such a great fantasy football option. I think Derrick Henry is going to be a little bit more than what Jerome Bettis was that year, because I think that he's a little underrated as a pass catcher, and he's going to get some work there. And he's more of a finesse guy than what people might want to believe. But anyway, I sort of compared it to that, and I think that he's going to get just a ton of goal line carries. I think we could expect, again, you don't know, but I'm hoping certainly, that he's going to get a lot of goal line touchdowns, and so
you just hope Tennessee can get. Hope Tennessee can get to the goal line enough.
Well, that's right.
I mean, that's
the
problem.
thing. Can they get inside the 20? And that's certainly been a problem. You're exactly right. But I believe in their offense more than some people do, and I really think that Marcus Mariota is in for a fantastic season. And he was a guy that I don't like to draft Titans players. Delaney Walker, everybody knows I would draft Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker is my fantasy boo. Somebody sniped me on him. I was so mad about that. So no one had sniped me on him. But, I don't like to draft Titans players because of that. It just really makes my life too hard to have to, want them to win anyway, and then have them on a fantasy team too. And frankly, there haven't been that many good fantasy players.
Yeah. Up until kind of recently, with some of the wide receivers kind of stepping up, but
yeah. So, and I should have had you do this. So tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where they can find your work, and find you out there on social media and all of that.
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at MikeMarFF. I didn't want to do my full last name because it would be brutal.
Yes.
But so I'm on there. I'm on 4 for 4, doing all the kind of NFL 10 best ball stuff there. Doing a lot of work there with great guys, great place. I'm happy to be there. So those are kind of the two main places you can reach me. So.
Yeah, and I wanted you to say that because I wanted you to tell everybody just a little bit about, because we've been talking about MFLs and using that. Tell everybody, familiarize our listeners a little bit with what MFLs are.
Yep, absolutely. Kind of the short version here is they're 20 rounds. You only draft them. To draft only. You don't do any waiver wires. You don't submit your lineups every week. The system automatically picks your best players. It starts a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, defense, and a flex. So it automatically picks your best players. So you just draft the 20 rounds, and you're done. And hope for the best. $10, and if you come in first, you win $100.
Yeah, it's really easy, low maintenance. Well, I say easy. It's low maintenance for one thing. I had sort of a hit or miss record last year, but I had so many injuries, and that's the thing. You just never know. Injuries are gonna strike your fantasy team, and it's kind of crazy. I can't let you get out of here without asking you, what do you think is the best Tom Hanks movie, or what is your favorite?
Tom, I heard you before I hopped on talking about that. I'm like the old Tom Hanks. I love Big. That's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yes, mine too. I love that movie.
And then one of my favorite favorite movies with my dad growing up was The Burbs.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of my favorite movies.
Lord, he's just been in so many movies. It's really hard.
Yeah. I mean,
now, be honest, Mike. You're a closet bachelor party fan, aren't you?
I think I've only seen that once.
Oh, yeah?
Somehow.
What about Turner and Hooch? Have you seen it?
Yep. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. I haven't seen it in a while, though. I got to watch that again.
I had forgotten all about that movie. So, all right, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it was great to be on. Thanks so much, Rona.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Take
care. Bye.
All right. Shout out to my buddy Mike, a great Patriots fan, a great fantasy football guy. He's been so great to donate his time to come on, Going for Two with my buddy Zach Law and me on our Wednesday night Going for Two show. First time on the podcast. Happy to have him on. Great discussion about Tom Brady. Part of me agrees with Mike, and Bill Belichick would never do that, right? I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo's playing well and the team's on a 4-0 win streak, I mean, he'd never stick with him, right? But then another part of me is like, you know what? Wild Bill will do anything, and so I don't know. I guess we'll see. But Tom Brady is an interesting fantasy quarterback because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen, and so the 4 games, not having him for 4 games, to me, that's in order to make the playoffs, you got to have players, and I'm avoiding him. I don't want to carry a guy on my roster. I'm automatically going to have to sit for 4 games. It's going to be interesting to see how that whole situation shakes out. SFB 480, such a great thing. Again, shout out to Scott Fish for all the time that he puts into that, and for providing such a great mechanism for the fantasy football community, not only to have fun, but to learn about one another, to meet new people. we're going to be tweeting out some links to help you support that cause. Scott Fish is a big supporter of Toys for Tots. We'll tweet out some links for you if you have the ability to donate and to help that great worthy cause. Please do so. We'll take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some political stuff. We're going to talk some gaming, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk vaginas. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. As always, I thank you for tuning in. Shout out to Mike, my buddy Mike, at Mike FF on Mike MFLFF for joining. Let me see. Let me get at Mike Mar FF. It's his Twitter handle. Let me get that right for joining me, and great discussion on the Scotty Fish Bowl, on fantasy football, on the Patriots, and on the situation with Tom Brady and how that might play out. We're going to turn our attention to the political world. We're going to talk a little bit about some things that are going on politically. Very interesting story locally. Pants Candy, we'll talk a little bit about that. But and of course, Donald Trump, the Donald Trump, Tim Tebow thing, and then we'll finish up with some gaming talk as we usually do. Let's talk some vaginas, shall we? It's always interesting to me that guys in general, getting into the vagina is kind of a thing, right? I mean, you spend 9 months trying to get back and then the rest of your life trying to get back in. But it's always interesting to me how guys don't seem to understand female anatomy, reproduction, vaginas, and whatnot. Because as I was, this happened, I've been meaning to talk about this, and I had been forgetting. It never ceases to amaze me when you talk about abortion that so many people, a lot of them being of the male persuasion, seem to think that pregnancy only, or a pregnancy that you might not want, only seems to come about by bad decisions. And of course, only by bad decisions by the woman, because the man is never involved. And, it's the immaculate conception, and it's simply and solely the woman's bad. Ladies, you only get pregnant by bad decisions. You know that, right? I mean, that's the only way that happens. Let's completely ignore reality and just focus in on that. You only get pregnant because of bad decisions. Shame on you, you slutful whores, for that. But unfortunately, that's not true. And pregnancy doesn't happen. It's just not a one-way street. It didn't happen just solely by virtue of a woman's bad decision. And there's, in some form or fashion, there's male sperm is involved. I hate to tell you that. Hate to break that to you, dudes. But you know what? You're involved in the act of contraception. And, it's not solely the woman's bad decision that leads to pregnancy. So, and it's interesting. This is something that I have been meaning to talk about and point out. It never ceases to amaze me. And I know that it's, maybe it's hard to keep up with everything. There, for a long, long time, there was a thought process that you shouldn't question. You shouldn't question your doctors. You shouldn't question your physicians. They know best. They know everything. They're with the God complex that a lot of them have. They're perfect and kind of like police officers, I suppose, and can do no wrong. But there has long been a problem that women don't always get the best information when it comes to their own personal health care. And, there are drug interactions that can reduce the effectiveness of birth control. Condoms break. Pregnancy, an unplanned pregnancy can happen through a wide variety of means. And when you say that women only have unplanned pregnancies because of bad decisions, you really sound ignorant. And you probably should educate yourself about how vaginas and reproduction really works, because it's not just that. There are other ways that can happen, and it takes two to tango, as they say. So yeah, let's educate ourselves on that. Pants candy. There is a very interesting story coming out from the Tennessee legislature, a place that I am intimately familiar with, having interned there and worked there back when I was in college. A local Tennessee state legislator got himself in trouble because of a series of, it was an investigation, I guess I should say. And I'm pulling this up so we can get his name and talk about him. Hopefully, Jeremy Durham is his name. The investigation indicated that there was what the Tennessean calls sexual interactions with 22 women. There is some indication that the investigation revealed that some of the interactions sorry, you guys, some of the interactions were not consensual, were unwilling. That's sexual harassment. There was an interaction with an intern, a college intern. I can tell you that married male legislators interacting with interns is nothing new. It's not, that part of it was certainly not shocking to me. But as a result of this investigation, now he came out and gave a press conference where he denied it and said that the allegations were false, that he has suspended his political campaign. But one of these interactions allegedly earned him the nickname Pants Candy because of a sexually loaded comment that he made, allegedly, to, I believe it was to an intern. And so she allegedly gave him the name Pants Candy, which is so funny to me in so many different ways, but also kind of, I don't know. But so he suspended his campaign. I suppose that means he's still going to be on the ballot. One would hope that common sense and prudency would prevail in his days as a legislator would seem to be over. But given recent events, given what's going on a national stage with this country politically, I don't know. I'm not so sure that prudence will prevail. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll keep you guys up to date on that. But it's definitely an interesting story, and it's pretty interesting because I do think times they are a changing. 15, 10, 20 years ago, something like this would have gotten swept under the rug. Beth Harwell would not be coming out and supporting women in this, but times being what they are, and political expediency being what it is, she is, and so this particular male legislator didn't get away with what was alleged in that investigation. The presidential election, we're seeing amazing. Social media is such a game changer, right? Because information is so readily available. You're so plugged in. News is 24/7. You can't. A politician can't say anything in Sioux City and and hope that it'll just remain with his constituents. It's going to get out. It's good. In some ways it's bad, but mostly it's good. And so the political election this year really is pretty fascinating because you do have that immediacy. You do have that, that really full blown coverage. And so you're going to have access to a lot more information than ever before. The Pokemon Go craze has definitely hit that. Hillary Clinton, I thought it was funny that she took so much grief over her Pokemon Go thing. I mean, I don't know. Is she supposed to completely ignore the Pokemon Go craze? I mean, come on, people. I think that what bothers or offends or what people hate on really kind of says a lot about them. That didn't. I mean, it was. Did I roll my eyes? Probably. I seem to be doing that a lot lately, but it was kind of interesting. First of all, that she used that, but I mean, these politicians are trying to get the millennial, the younger vote. They're using Snapchat and a lot of different mechanisms to try to reach that vote. And if they weren't doing that, frankly, they would be doing their campaign a disservice. They should be trying to reach, to reach. And so, but I find not only the action itself, but the reaction. As always, the reaction, the discourse surrounding something is what fascinates me, and that was pretty fascinating. So hey, Donald Trump, boy. We could spend hours talking about that guy, right? He has made his vice presidential selection, and it's very interesting. It's kind of like that game where you hide something under like coconut rounds, or and you try to find you pull it around and you try to find it. I kind of feel like did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and came up with with the guy that he selected. It's Pence. Michael Pence, I believe, is his name, and he is a very interesting candidate. The Republican Party right now is a hot mess, and it seems to be full of a lot of hatred, a lot of it's really scary, isn't it? Don't you think? I mean, it's full of hatred and a lot of just a lot of craziness. Donald Trump doesn't seem to know very much about how government works, about our Constitution, but I mean, it's kind of, he lies so much, it's kind of hard to get a feel for Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe he just changes his mind. I saw somebody say, "Oh, he just changes his mind a lot." Well, it's kind of hard to get a feel for someone when they're constantly changing their mind. Um, but it is very interesting how often he does contradict himself. Seems to say what is politically expedient at the moment. Uh, I, this country is definitely on at a crossroads on what it wants to be. Does it want to be a country full of hatred, full of violence, full of uh, discrimination, full of deportation, full of the reduction of personal liberties for people that we don't like? I don't know. It sure seems to be that at times when you look at things. But I think this country is better than that. I want to think that this country is better than that. I want to think that this country would not elect a hate monger like Donald Trump, a guy who, I mean, I'm literally terrified of what would happen in this country if he gets elected. And um, I want to think this country is better than that, but I don't know. I suppose that we will see. We'll see if we are a better nation. We'll see if we reject hatred and violence and all the things that are associated with that. We'll take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that, of course, is gaming. We seem to be ending this show with a gaming discussion every week. We might have to make that a permanent thing. I don't know. We'll see about that. But anyway, so stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You are tuned in and listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. Once again, shout out to my buddy Mike for joining me in the second part of the first hour, talking about fantasy football, talking about Tom Brady and the Patriots. We talked about the Scotty Fish Bowl. Such a great thing. So proud to be associated with that. Shout out to Scott Fish for all the hard work that he does. We're going to talk some gaming. You guys know I love me some gaming. And there was a very interesting article that came out. It got my blood boiling, and that's, you get my blood boiling, that I'm going to have to talk about it. And so I'm trying to pull it up right now. So it was an article talking about diversity in gaming, primarily talking about women in gaming. And I want to read you guys. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy, Gary Gygax. I'm reading from the Kotaku article. We'll tweet this out. Great article by Cecilia, who wrote about the struggle to bring women in game development. But anyway, he once told a reporter for Icon magazine, and quote, "Gaming in general is a male thing," end quote, which is a rather amazing thing for a game developer to say, because A, it's not true, and it really does a disservice to the audience that he is trying to reach for him to have that belief, and B, that it, he didn't have the wherewithal to check himself and try to find out whether, in fact, that was true. And I think that that's a common thing. This is something that women have been fighting over for years. And I've talked about that on this show. Sports is a male thing. Gaming is a male thing. There are some guys who think that their activity is an exclusively male thing. We talked on this show, it's been a few months, we talked on this show about how sports, guys haven't wanted to let women into that, that male club. Now that's changing. I think gaming is changing too. Certainly you're seeing more, you're seeing more women write about gaming for one thing, and that's a good thing. You're seeing more women talking about gaming. That's a good thing. You're seeing more women, openly discussing gaming and openly, diving into issues surrounding gaming and lack of diversity. One of the interesting things that this article talked about, I'm going to scroll down and try to find it, and I can so relate to this, you guys. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is because I could so relate to it. There's a book that came out, and it's full of essays by women in and around the industry. Women in Game Development, Breaking the Glass Level Cap, was edited by Jennifer Brandes Helper. Again, we'll tweet out the link to this. But one of the stories in it, and I could so relate to this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it again, is that one of the women who wrote an essay, she, in the beginning, I want to use the word pose, but she removed any reference to gender in her persona, so that her identity as a woman wouldn't become a thing in her gaming, in her gaming life, in her gaming persona, in her gaming activities. And I can relate to that because I did that too when I first started writing about gaming, writing about sports and talking about sports on message boards and what have you. I didn't openly identify myself as a woman because I didn't want to suffer the backlash that I knew, or the automatic rejection, of my thoughts and what have you, because of my gender. And I wanted to be judged solely on my opinion on what I thought and felt about sports. I didn't want to have to deal with that. And then I also didn't want to have to deal with well, that's a pretty good thing for a girl. Well, you know a lot about sport. I mean, I had already had to deal with that, personally when you interact in a, face-to-face personal manner. I just wanted to be a sports fan, a sports person, a sports consumer with thoughts and opinions about sports. But I knew that revealing my identity as a woman would be a thing and would detract from that, and I would either be disregarded because of that, or B, be fending off advances because I was, a woman interacting in this community. And so it was, that just struck a note with me that, the great thing about more women speaking up and about social media and about the internet and about where we are as a society is that you can read something like this and you can say, I'm not alone. I know exactly what she's talking about because I did that too, or that happened to me, or, I know that guy, he did that too. And, it's a good thing that we have women like them who are willing to speak up and speak out and share their own personal stories and talk about these things, because it shows that we really have more in common, more things that bind us than things that divide us. And if we can focus on the things that are common, our commonality, the things that that we share, instead of the things that divide us, then I think the world would be we'd live in a better country, we'd live in a better society. But it's very interesting. I'm getting ready to tweet it out because we're about to run out of time. Shout out to Owen Good for, you guys know I'm such a big gamer, and I don't play too many online games, too many multiplayer games. My friend Owen Good, was so kind to play the Elder Scrolls Online with me last night. Yeah, I was so excited. I was like in heaven. It's like the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. We had a lot of fun out there roaming around. Two mages ruling the world. Mages rule. So shout out to him for doing that with me. It was so much fun. I hope that we can do that again. Maybe we'll Twitch it. I don't know. He didn't seem all that thrilled about that idea. I finally, one of the good things to come out of that is it finally spurred me to get my Kinect out of the box and hook it up, and it's working wonderfully. And so I'm so excited. I need to get back and Twitch some more. I'm going to do that. Probably, I don't know. I guess I could. I'm going to be going out of town for a little bit, so I'll be doing the show from another location next week. I might take it with me. We'll see. But it was so much fun. Thank you, Owen, so much for doing that with me. I really enjoyed it. It's fun to play these online games with people that you know. And I intended to talk about online game playing as a woman, as a girl, but we didn't have enough time. We'll do that in the near future. So wanted to give a shout out to him. And then here's the thing. I have to throw this out too. This article was kind of interesting that it came out in conjunction with Facebook coming out and saying the reason why they didn't have diversity on their staff was because there was a lack of available talent. That's such complete and utter bullshit that I just can't even. There are women who want to get into gaming. There are women who want to get into sports. There are women who, and other minorities who want to do all kinds of things. If you're coming at me with the lack of available options, you need to miss me with that. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. You can follow me out there on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Holla at your girl. If you have any ideas for the show, let me know. Anything you want me to talk about, happy to do that. We're going to go ahead and sign off for today. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week, probably next Friday. Again, shout out to Mike for joining me and to Scott Fish for the Scott Fish Bowl thing. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.